Hello. There are people there, and
Oh,
we're
goodness.
working out how this is going to
It's really
work
good.
out.
Yeah, really.
Brilliant, we're there.
Hey. Go live.
We're going. Stay there, folks. Stay there. We're just getting
Hello.
ready.
Hi.
There he is.
Hi.
Hello. How are you both?
Good, how are you?
I'm very well. I'm very well. We made the technology work.
I know, but I still haven't managed to add that thing you said.
That's okay. Don't worry. We can pop it at the bottom later on. Don't worry. I can talk about it as well. So no stress. Thank you so much for doing this. It's really appreciated.
Not at all. Thanks for asking us.
I'm so glad the technology works. It's a very interesting time, I think, for Instagram. It's being used all the time. So we've sort of done the difficult bit. So hopefully this should be nice and fun. But just once again, thank you so much. And hello to everybody that's watching. Just for probably a little bit of context to explain why I've dragged you both here tonight, is to raise some awareness and also hopefully some funds for Theatre Camp Live, which is supporting Covenant House in the United States and also LGBT Switchboard here in the United Kingdom. And we've had some amazing responses so far. So just thank you so much to everybody that's been very kind enough to take part. So how I'd like this to work is I've got lots and lots of questions. I mean, my inbox today has literally been overflowing with things that people would like to know from you both. So I've got some questions that I'd like to ask. And then if anyone else would like to ask anything, then I'm sure I can try and fire some of those over to you as well. So I guess the most important thing is just to say that if people do want to get involved today, pop the comments in the bottom. And donations wise, if you go to club11.london/donate, all of the information is on there. Okay, so I guess my first question is, it seems like quite a while ago now, but on that sort of famous day that the West End went quiet, do you want to sort of talk me through, I guess, where were you and sort of what part of your day were you at?
It was quite an extraordinary day, actually, wasn't it? Because I think that we'd sort of come to the conclusion that obviously the Broadway had shut, and we thought, well, we carried on for a bit since then, and we were thinking this can't go on for much longer. And actually, we were gathered in the auditorium at the Garrick to do some working notes with the director and the cast and the crew, and we were all sort of sat round. And we never made it to do the notes because Nika, the producer, came into the theatre, and we were sort of discussing, planning how to move forward, if we should be doing the show. Mm-hmm. And then it was like a moment I think that none of us will ever forget when we went off into our respective groups, in our union-based groups, to discuss how we felt about going ahead with the show. Yeah. And if it was right, essentially. And then Boris Johnson made his announcement at 5 p.m. and it was just sort of booming through the theatre, and we were sat there and everyone went completely silent, and just the sound desk put it on the big monitors, and we were sat on the set of City of Angels. And then it was a weird moment of sort of knowing what to do after that. Do we clear our dressing rooms? Do we, you know?
Yeah, as all of this, I think, has sort of presented to people, there's a level of unprecedented activity here that I think all of us are still getting used to. I think as we were sat there in the theatre listening to Boris Johnson being piped over the sound system, you know, I think none of us could really have expected what was going to come. Some of us, I think, could probably, you know, take a guess or take a certain guesstimate and fear what was happening, of course. But you know, certainly I think the challenges that face all of us, and I suppose for our point of view as well, the theatre world, I think at that point weren't even close to becoming certain. So we were all just kind of sitting there thinking, oh, okay, maybe we will see one another again soon, but you know, who knows whether that's going to happen now.
Was there, I guess, almost a nervousness, or was there a feel that you had as performers that about how the audience felt during that time? Because it was slightly strange in the run-up to the announcement that people sort of weren't sure how they should be reacting. I guess, what was it like actually in the theatre when you were performing?
I think the longer it went on, we sort of couldn't believe how many people were sort of still coming, really. I think only on the Saturday did it start to tail off, and then there was a sort of smattering of mask wearing in the auditorium. But yeah, I think that was the one thing that we all kept saying backstage, is like, wow, we're so amazed at how many people are still feeling that they want to come out. And I think Hattie's absolutely right. I don't think the severity of the situation sort of hit home, certainly not even when we left the theatre that evening. We were still invited to go back the following week to collect our things should we need them. But then it's an unprecedented time. We keep saying it, don't we? We don't know when we'll be back, whether it will be this year, next year. Yeah, it was, I guess.
Yeah, I think up until the point that someone pressed a button saying you can't go to the theatre anymore, obviously there's an audience who always want to come and see it. And I'm sure there will be again, you know, there'll be a time and a place where things will be safe and where the situation will be allowing us to all get back in the theatre, and that will be a very welcome time, as long as that's safe and as long as we can all go and do that. But, you know, there was a feeling, I suppose, up until that point, wasn't there, of, oh, you know, we're led by what people are telling us, and we'll keep on going to the theatre up until that point. But, yeah, certainly when that button was pressed, it suddenly felt like, it felt very strange that we'd been there, I suppose, up until that point.
Yeah, definitely. It's so you guys were in your previews. You were fast approaching your official West End opening night. How was the reaction so far? Because this show really is and was the talk of the town. People were very excited about it.
Oh, well, that's kind to say. I mean, we were having we're having the best time of our lives. Actually, it was lovely to go back to the production and having a mixture of the original cast and a new cast who were absolutely astonishing. I think we said the other day, because we don't really talk that much about work at home, and I think we just sort of only 90% of the day. But I think we said the other day it was such this is not to take away from what we're living through. We were just sort of reminiscing, saying how wonderful and how proud we were of that production, and how excited we were to share it with people. Yeah, because we felt that we had worked really hard to make it, if not as good, but better than before. And we had a bigger set to do it on, and an amazing creative team and cast. We're genuinely having such a lovely time, weren't we? And I think whoever managed to see it in the few weeks before we opened, I hope that they got the sense of that it was an absolute joy to be back doing it again.
Yeah. One of the people that are in that cast is Vanessa Williams, and she very famously made some extra headlines recently when she appeared on RuPaul's Drag Race. I wonder, have you seen her sort of big transformation yet? Have you seen what she did?
We haven't seen it yet. I think our WhatsApp group has been shared by Vanessa, but we are.
Yeah, we've seen a few clips.
We've seen a few clips. Yeah.
To be honest with you, we probably spend more time watching things that our 3-year-old wants to watch than
I thought you might say that.
To watch. So we don't get a lot of chance to watch anything growing up, to be honest. But yeah, Vanessa's doing us proud, I think, still sort of representing the show over there. And, you know, I know she in particular is very keen to get back when the theatres reopen. And you know, we were very fortunate to have a hell of a cast there. And there were some very exciting performances that I don't think were seen by people, or at least not seen by very many people. And as Rosie said, you know, we had a sort of top-notch creative team, and it felt once again slightly that City of Angels has unfinished business. You know, the fact that we did it for, I think, only 6 or 7 weeks at the Donmar first time around, and that was a very, very well-received production. Yeah. This one, I think we only managed about 2 weeks of previews, and, you know, before... Obviously, and there's no sort of small violins playing here. There's bigger things at stake. But before that one got shut down, so there's something that sort of I think is attached to that particular production that you sort of go, right. I hope one day, maybe third time lucky, that we'll have a decent run at it, and people will see just what an amazing, very classy piece of work this is. That's not done all that frequently.
The band they were insane.
Oh, next
sound
level.
alone. I mean, I think we just want to even do a sort of concert version of it for people to hear the noise those guys made. It was incredible.
Speaking of noises, that's our cat in the background.
We've got a kitten.
Apologies for that.
Just about hear it. How is it getting to go to work together? Is that fun? Is that, I guess, as brilliant as people would expect it to be, I guess, or is it slightly strange? I guess, how did you guys find it?
It's dreadful.
Over to you.
Entirely dreadful.
Be very careful with your answer.
No, I think we're perhaps in the minority that we quite enjoy it. I mean, I'm not sure we do it all the time. I think there's probably quite a healthy separation of church and state sometimes, but I think well, I'm going to speak purely personally here, but I enjoy it. And,
do you, darling? No, I do as well. I really, it's actually it's weirdly comforting to go to work together. And also because we weren't, it wasn't a production where obviously we were playing husband and wife in it, but we weren't playing every single scene together opposite each other. Our kitten is literally about to knock us over. Please don't do that. No, stay there. But yeah, I think it's nice sometimes to go away from one another, to come back. Here's the kitten.
Oh, wow.
A menace. To go away and then come home to talk about it and share new experiences. And I certainly love going to watch you and things. And
I think we have a very different way, a very similar way of working. We feel very differently, I think, about some things, but I think incredibly similarly about how we approach work. And that's really freeing, I think.
Very.
Without sounding too sort of theatrical, too actorly. Yeah. There are scenes in City of Angels where we get to be on stage together, and I don't know, they're some of the most exciting times that I've had on stage, certainly in a rehearsal room, because we're both very, very keen on sort of inventing and playing. And again, I don't want to sound too actorly, but, you know, there's a sort of common understanding, isn't there?
Although I will say, on the sort of final Saturday before the show, before the whole of the West End shut down, I think I stumbled on a line and dear Hadley Fraser basically laughed in my face. I was like, thanks for the support. Yeah, so there's, you know, ups and downs.
There'll be payback at least. You just remember that one. Yeah.
I will.
Always.
Hadley, I have to ask about the beard. Is that something that you've done through isolation, or was that part of the show?
No, the show I was very clean shaven, actually, William. The beard is just an isolation laziness.
I love it.
Do you?
Actually, Rob Houchen, who I'm sure some of the Instagram live viewers, is that what you call them, viewers? I'm sure some of them will know Rob Houchen. He keeps on texting me just with the words Wilson attached to it. So there is something of a castaway, I think, about this beard. But yeah, if left to my own devices, it often comes out, to be honest.
It's going to get like, it's getting sort of a holder for it.
Yeah, there's birds nesting in it these days.
That will hopefully answer literally all of the comments that are at the bottom about the beard. So I've asked it, so I hope everyone is happy with me asking that.
If City of Angels strikes back up again, it's gone. You know, there's no.
Hadley, another question that lots of people have been asking me to talk about is the Pirate Queen, because I think that show has gained an extraordinary following after its run, and it must sort of been the show that and the gift that constantly keeps on giving, because people love the story, people love the show, people love the music, and they love to hear it sung. So I guess, how is that experience for you, and do you love the fact that people still love it all these years later?
Yeah, it's a funny one, that I don't, to be honest with you, I suppose because, you know, in comparison with some of their other work, Bibel and Schoenberg, it was a failure, I suppose, you know, to be blunt about it. It doesn't have that same sort of impact in the cultural consciousness, or certainly the theatrical consciousness that Les Mis and Miss Saigon, and to a certain extent Martin Guerre have. But certainly as a personal experience, it's something that I would have made the same decision to go and do it again and again. You know, being on Broadway at 26, 27, whatever that was an incredible experience, and I learned a great deal. And there's still things that I learned on that show that I think I go into work and go into productions these days with at the back of my mind. I'm very proud of my association with it. You know, I know that there was a concert performance of it in London not too long ago, so it was nice to know that it's getting another life. I confess, the last time I sang "I'll Be There" was in Japan last year, and it was something of a shock to the system. I sort of thought, man, that's quite a hard song to sing. I could do that night after night without thinking about it when I was 27. But you know, however many years later, it was something of a Herculean task, or at least Sisyphean. So there was a lot going for that show. There was a lot that could have been a bit better. I think even Claude Michel and Alain might admit to that. But I made some very good friends, Stephanie J. Block included, and I'm very proud of it. Yeah, I mean, I suppose we both are. You know, there's not many shows that I don't have a great deal of pride for. I think you're probably the same with the things that you've done.
Yeah, it's a really great show, and I think it's amazing to see the love for it now. Again, apart from Company, that's one of the things that kept coming up to ask you, was just to try and talk about the Pirate Queen. So it seems like the fandom is certainly still there. I mentioned it there, Rosie. So let's talk about Company very quickly. So when you were part of the bubble that was that show, that really was the talk of the town last year. Working with Patti LuPone, Marianne Elliott, obviously originating a role and a story that we knew, but from a completely different perspective. Do you remember the moment that you realised that it was working? Because as with everything new, it's obviously a risk. But do you remember that moment where you thought, I think we're onto something really special here?
Yeah, I suppose I do. I mean, I don't ever like to count my chickens, really. But because I'm a bit sort of, I don't know whether it's old school, but I sort of like to feel that every single night I have to go out there as if it's the first night and try and sort of win the audience over, because I suppose I think once you sort of sit into something and rest into it, it can easily evaporate as it's sort of as quickly as it's come together as something special. Yeah. But I certainly will never, ever, 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 ever forget the first preview. And I just thought, well, if I make it through live, that's amazing, because I don't think I've ever felt equally as excited and nervous to share something, because certainly it had been something that Marianne and I had been working on for a long time before it came onto the stage, and we had to wait. Oh, sorry, there's a cat's bum there. Nice. timely. So yeah, I remember the first preview, and just, I mean, it was, I'll go with it. I'll go to the grave with it. It just felt like, I just didn't know it was going to be received as open-heartedly as it was. That's not to say that I've believed in it since Marianne even discussed the idea of it with me. I just it was a truly, truly, truly special experience on the whole, but that particular evening was magical.
It was special to watch. And is it slightly strange to say that it didn't feel wrong, that it had been flipped on its head, that it felt like it had always been like that it was sort of never been in any other incarnation? It just felt so right as an audience to watch it. Did you sort of feel that on stage?
Yeah, I guess I did. I mean, I suppose I'd done the other version at Shadow Crucible when I played Marta back in the day, and it very much, I think, from the very early discussions about it, we always felt like it was a slightly historical period piece. So to come back at it with this with this freshness to it, and it felt very, for me, very personal. Personally, I felt it was an incredibly important message to make about women, and about the equality that needs to be discussed, really, about us in general, and us wanting, us not being unsexual or promiscuous or bold or wanting to be single and wanting to be alone. And I just felt, I'm glad that you felt that. I felt like every time I left stage door, it was a pleasure, because people would say, this is my story, or thank goodness there's a voice for women now, which isn't just being the girlfriend of, or being the wife of. You know, it was a privilege to do.
Absolutely. Does it, because of the success of the show, does it now make you think about other possible shows that could have the gender swap? Because you do think, if we could do it with Company, what else might we be able to do?
Oh gosh, do you know what? I wish I was that person. I'm just a bit lazy and I wait for people to ask me to do things. I mean, it does beg the question, doesn't it? I'm sure there's loads and loads of stuff out there, but I don't think that we need to go through the whole musical theatre canon and just sort of slash it and make all the men women. But I certainly think there'll be
women men.
There you go. I think there's I'm sure there's lots and lots of productions which could withstand those sort of changes and bring them up to date. But certainly that one felt completely right.
The first introduction. Oh, sorry, go on.
It feels to me, and I didn't want to chime in there because I think the message of the show is that men ought to probably shut up. But
just in general,
it felt to me, watching the show and watching Rosie, who was sort of
Whoa! Great.
There goes the cat.
This is comedy.
Rosie was unmatched, really, in that. But it felt to me now that going back to doing Company with a man would feel, if not reductive, then certainly this show to me now doesn't make a sense, and that was a show that I knew very, very well. I suppose I looked at it with very, very fresh eyes, and the way that Rosie and the way that the guys did it, it now feels to me like it could only be done in that.
I just think we've moved on, haven't we? The conversation's moved on in terms of, that's what it felt like during the piece. It felt like people needed to have a different conversation about relationships, and essentially that's what the piece is doing now. Yeah,
definitely. Because I read in an interview with the lady's name that I've forgotten now, the lady that originated in Come From Away, and she said there was even a discussion with the Broadway production about introducing a queer female character to the show. So it looks like there's so many different possibilities coming from it. It does feel like it is real progression, and I think Company is a real fundamental part of that step forward.
That's great. Well, if that's what it does, then it's done a brilliant job.
Definitely. Rosalie, one of the first times that I ever got the pleasure of seeing you on stage was in one of my favourite shows ever, which is Lord of the Rings. And
goodness, was it?
I think, I'm nervous to say, I think it was the first time I actually ever saw you on stage, and I'm obsessed with that show. I was actually listening to it before we did this, because I was like, I just want to remember how fantastic those orchestrations were, and how brilliant that show was. Because I do think it was the first time on stage that we'd seen the sort of epic movie adaptation brought to life on stage. Playing Arwen, what was it like, I guess, playing a character we loved, what we all knew, but in a completely different way, and it also being on stage?
I had the absolute time of my life on that job. Also because I think I'd only ever been in the West End before for about 5 seconds with the Royal Shakespeare Company. So it was like doing a big scale show with Matthew Warchus and Lord of the Rings, which, you know, we watch every winter anyway. We're obsessed with it. We love it. It was fascinating. It was absolutely fascinating to do. And luckily, I was young enough to not be obsessed with the fact that I wasn't Liv Tyler. So I was just managed to don a wig and some enormous shoes. But I think for me, you've hit the nail on the head there. The score for me was just, there's probably 2 things that I only ever listened to that I was a part of. One of which is that, but I don't listen to myself. I listen to everybody else. And London Road. They're the only 2. London Road. There's two L's. But it was absolutely fascinating being part of that. I'm trying to cast my mind back, but it felt, we were in tech for about a year, and the set was so huge. I just remember just every time coming into this thinking, this is insane. The set moving and Gollum crawling over it. It was so ambitious. And I think it may not have been, oh my goodness, I'm so sorry. You have to put the cat somewhere else. This is ridiculous. I'm so sorry.
No, it's fine, don't worry.
It's absolute comedy.
Can you still speak a little bit of Elvish? Has it stuck with you?
No. What do I
the song, I feel like I know. I think the first line is under la, then it goes on from there, doesn't it?
Oh my goodness.
The Song of Hope.
If I listened to it, the Song of Hope, I could do it. I reckon I could do it. And we used to learn Elvish with our hands. It was. I'm so glad you like that.
Yeah.
But I was just going on to say that I don't think critically it was the biggest hit in the world, but much like Hadley said with Pirate Queen, I would have done it again and again and again. I would never have been able to walk away from that sort of opportunity. I mean, when did you do Lord of the Rings on stage?
It was epic. It really was epic. I wondered if you had a little bit of Lady Galadriel envy because she got the big cloth entrance. Did you think I'd quite like to do that?
There's a lot to talk about, but also Laura Michelle is amazing and was way more experienced than me at musicals at this point. I just remember watching her in that gold costume. I think when she was having gold leaf put on her face, when I used to sit in her dressing room and watch her spin down the silks, I thought, yeah, she might have got a better entrance there. That's fair play.
I love it.
She deserved it.
And it was sort of wow, but I think it was wow because of the entire production, and obviously the Gollum entrance was phenomenal as well. It was amazing, and I'm so glad. I felt kind of privileged actually to say that I was one of the very lucky people that got to see it. Hadley, Les Mis is a huge part of your career. I imagine that when you're doing concerts, lots of people want to hear you sing songs from it. has Les Mis always been, I guess, a favourite show of yours, and having been in it, do you sort of still love it, or are you like, oh gosh, it's that show again?
Yeah, I didn't know it. I didn't know it before I first did it, so
Okay.
it wasn't one that was sort of known, I suppose. I came out of college and went into the London production, and hadn't really an idea of what it quite was, I don't think, and so that was a bit of an eye opener. But yeah, I suppose that you're right. It has been a part of my life, my career, certainly my working life. I regard it as a brilliantly written piece of work. As a consequence, that's why I've gone back to it a couple of times. And there are parts there that I think are sustainable over a year, you know, in order to play. So I think I've always enjoyed the thought of that, and I think I've done the parts now that I'd want to do. You know, people sometimes say to me, "Would you come back and do Valjean or something like that?" Cameron thinks I'm too small and too thin to do that. Yeah, seriously.
It's nice of him.
It's very sweet of him, which is nice, I guess.
Yeah.
But also Valjean's just too much like hard work. So, you know,
that's the truth of it. It's not about the thinness or the nothing.
There's a toast in some theatrical circles which goes like this: no heavy lifting. And Valjean to me is a great deal of heavy lifting, and I have a great deal of admiration for those people who can knock that out night after night. But yeah, I think having done the show twice in London, having done the 25th anniversary and the movie, you know, I've ticked those particular boxes, and I'm very glad that the show still has a great following, and I'm very proud of my association, and I have a great deal to thank that show for, a great deal to thank Cameron McIntosh for, in particular, for hauling me out of college and into that show straight away. But yeah, I think certainly for the foreseeable future, who knows what the world might throw at us from now on, but certainly for the foreseeable future, I don't see myself going back there. But I'm sure, you know, like you said, in concerts and things like that, I'll be doing it probably forever. I know that I've got some concerts hopefully coming up in Japan in September, and I would be staggered if some Les Mis wasn't on the set list somewhere.
I don't know if you guys caught that comment, but we should probably just say hello to Vanessa Williams, who I think just joined the chat and sent you guys a wave. So
they've had snow, you know. She's had snow in upstate New York where she is. We
had paddling pools and it was snowing there. It was unbelievable.
Crazy, isn't it? The difference always slightly strange. But then I think my friends that live in Scotland have been having like terrible weather, and then we've had the sort of the sun. I felt a bit guilty being outside, but yeah.
No, that's pretty much all we've got right now, is the ability to get outside. You know?
Yeah, I mean, that's it.
In a socially distanced context.
Of course. Hadley, I wanted to ask you about moving from stage to screen and being in television shows and being in front of the camera. You managed to, I guess, work between the two different mediums. Do you enjoy the fact that, I guess, it challenges you as an actor to be able to work between the two? I guess, is that something that interests you?
Yeah, I mean, I think Rosie probably is more versed in that than I am, to be honest. But I know it's something that we've both strived, I think, over our working lives to do those, to sort of cross discipline, I suppose. It's something that I think we feel very strongly about, that as performers, that as actors, there is not necessarily that that thing of being one particular type of performer or one particular type of actor. We're always very, very conscious of doing a great many things. I'm very proud of the work that we've done sort of across the board. I feel that I'm drawn a lot to working on film. Perhaps it's the novelty of it, because I did, you know, a great deal of theatre work at the beginning of my working life. But yeah, I mean, you know, you work with people, I suppose, at the top of their game, in any world, I suppose, but certainly in that world, and you have a newfound respect for them. I mean, working with Ken Branagh on All Is True was something that I think I'll hold very, very dear forever, because I got an insight into how he thinks and how he works and how he looks at Life Through a Lens, how he captures things, a few sort of shorthand tricks of the trade, some slightly more long form things that he was very, very keen on. And I suppose there was a moment in that show where I looked at him, a moment in that film where I looked at him dressed up as William Shakespeare, and next to him was Judi Dench as his wife, and I thought, there are few people who are going to get the opportunity that I've got right now. So I felt incredibly fortunate to be in that position, and it made me very, very aware of doing the best work that I could do.
Yeah.
So yeah, I suppose I would hope that we are getting to a point, I know it's something that's frequently talked about, I would hope that we're getting to a point, certainly in the UK, where we are breaking a certain amount of barriers and walls down in terms of considering performers and actors to be one particular type or the other. I don't know how you feel about that, Rose.
Oh, I feel the same. I think I did. I was lucky enough to do a lot of screen work after I finished Company. I think it was all screen work up until we started City of Angels, and it is an incredibly different discipline, and one that I always feel like I have slight imposter syndrome with it. But by the end of sort of the 7th or 8th job, I was like, oh no, it's okay. You know, I'm allowed in, I'm allowed to be here. But essentially, I feel like our skills that we have theatrically only enhance what we do on screen. I think there's a deep understanding of how to do a performance, repeat it, change it, be versatile, you know, think on the spot. And I just love it. I absolutely love it. And now I'm not afraid of it. I mean, it's just something that, you know, well, I think we, you know, we'll be doing more of it in this current situation as well.
Do you think
the performers? I suppose the performers that I think, I don't know, don't want to speak for you, Rose, but the performers that I admire the most are the ones who make those transitions. You know,
absolutely.
I mean, you could keep on naming them, but they are the ones who I think have an understanding of playing particular situations, playing particular environments, being versatile, adapting their technique. I think it's something that we strive for, and it's something that I admire in other people massively.
Rosalie, do you think doing those shows up until you went into City of Angels actually helped you feel more grounded as an actor? Do you think that they actually play a direct part, even though they're in a slightly different medium, when you go back onto the stage?
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's a great understanding of it. And also I think that because I've spent most of my working life, you know, bar like a handful of TV jobs here and there, and I've spent 20 years on stage, so it was actually really essential for me to have a bit of a break from it, because I think as much as I love it, and blimey do I miss it at the moment as well, I really needed to go off and do something else in order to come back and feel the joy and the love for being on stage again, and that excitement. I remember when we walked past the Garrick and we were going for costume fittings, and I hadn't really been that much to theatre after Company, because I just needed to have some space from it for a while. And then I remember walking past and seeing into the theatre, and all of it, it was just like a rush of blood to the head. I was like, oh my God, I'm so excited. It was just gorgeous to be back out on stage again. But then, having said that, when I was doing filming, the last part of filming that I did on a series which is yet to come out on Amazon, I felt like that in front of the camera for maybe the first time, and I had a huge excitement to be doing the scene. I remember the director shouting, we were in this crazy warehouse at it's 2 a.m, it was freezing, and he just shouted out, he went, oh my God, this is so exciting. And I was thinking, it's really exciting, but yeah. I hadn't known it could sort of feel like that, because I hadn't spent enough time in that world.
Yeah, definitely. I think it's so interesting to hear you both talk about the love of something else when you've been on the stage and then go back to screen and then to go back. I think that must be exciting for you, personally, to remove your career from it, but just think of you as an individual in that moment, to get to sort of go back to what you love and then go to something else. That seems exciting. Yeah,
I mean, I think there's also an element of us just going, we're very lucky to work. So, I mean, I don't think there's ever a question of us going, I choose between, because we're just like, hey, we'll go over there, that's fine. If you want us to come work for you, that's fine.
Do you guys have a role or a specific production that you were part of that really means the most? That if I was to ask, was that your favourite, you'd say this would probably be it?
Yeah.
I mean, I suppose we should both say the production that we met on. So let's sort of use that as a basis. You know, I don't think I do really.
They're all so different, aren't
yeah,
they?
They really are.
They're like different chapters in your life. I suppose I always, but then if I pick out one, then I'm like, oh, but hang on, what about that? Oh, hang on. And then we're lucky to be able to, I'll never ever forget getting to do London Road. I just won't, because I wanted to work at the National my whole life, and being able to walk through that stage door with a little badge on saying that I was allowed in, but then also being completely stupid and not realising how extraordinary this production was going to be. I
think I'd probably say you doing London Road as well. Only because I was there for the first preview, and I suppose I was if I wasn't complicit in the rehearsal period, then I was certainly party to it. And I remember you guys going through Torture, sort of learning that score that I think is sort of unparalleled in terms of its complexity. And I remember you all sort of worrying whether it was going to people were even going to understand it, let alone enjoy it.
And also because of the subject matter, we were playing people who had been through this harrowing time in this community. It just wasn't something to be taken lightly. But they weren't fictional characters, and this was a horrendous thing that had happened. So there was a great deal of responsibility there as well.
But there was a feeling at the end of that first preview.
Oh my goodness!
And I'll never forget the look on your faces when the audience, and I was one of them, and I count myself particularly fortunate to have been there that night. But the audience sort of couldn't quite take in what they'd seen, the sort of majesty of the piece as a whole, of Aleki and Adam's work, of Rufus's direction, and of the entire Javier de Freitas's movement, the entire cast. You know, the design was incredible, and the audience as one just sort of got to their feet. It was one of those moments that you sort of go, I can't quite believe I was there. I don't know how it felt on the inside, but certainly as an audience member, we just went, I don't think I'm going to see something that profound and that moving. And for you guys, for us, we went, I've seen the first public performance of this, and I knew that these guys were going, we don't know how anyone's going to take it. And
we didn't know we'd get through it. I think that was the first time we'd ever done it right. It was like, did we actually do it right? Because if you missed a second on that, you were out. It was like, you're swimming in deep water, and there's no raft. I do remember that silence, and we just thought, I remember the very last, when we all walk off stage to Begonias and Petunias, and we walked off and I thought, oh dear. And then it was completely silent, and then it just went
bonkers.
Yeah, wow. In terms of career highlights, do you guys like the fact when you get to take on a brand new thing that it could become synonymous with you? I'm just thinking about the Light Princess, Rosalie, and the fact that I imagine every time that you talk to someone, it probably does come up in conversation.
What the Light Princess does?
Yes.
Oh God, that was, again, you see, how can I pick out London Road and then not talk about Light Princess? I mean, that was one of the greatest love affairs of my life, apart from you, my darling. It was...
At least she's honest.
Quick enough. It was, again, it was like another Marion Elliott feat. We worked for years and years together on it, and I think I had to learn how to be an acrobat and fly, and I just spoke to my good friend Stephen Hoggett today, and there was just so... It was just so extraordinary making a piece about a girl who could float. And actually, weirdly, for you to bring that up, I met a little girl in the park this morning with our daughter, and she was called Althea, and I thought, God, I haven't really met a child called Althea before, but suddenly all I could think, and I said to her, there's a story about you, about a floating princess, and I thought her mum was looking at me a bit strange. She was like, I was about to say, and I played it. I thought, no.
Just before we do a very quick fire round, because you guys have been incredibly kind with your time, Hadley, I want to talk about Coriolanus, because I believe it's coming to the live stream where people can watch it from home. Is that right?
That's right, yeah. It's part of the National Theatre at Home, I think June the 4th, I think, off the top of my head. Yeah, so look out for that one, yeah.
Will you be watching? Do you like watching yourself back, or are you like, no thank you?
I'm going to watch it.
Are you going to watch it?
Yeah.
Oh.
You may have
You won't be watching.
Categorically, no.
I would never watch myself. I
won't
watch you, though.
I won't. It's not a habit that I've got into very happily, watching myself. But that production, I suppose, would come close to perhaps breaking that habit, because
I'm very proud of it.
it was a terrific production, and
Yes.
I think Josie Rourke has to take an awful lot of the credit for that production. She simplified, I think, what can be a very tough and impenetrable play, and made it accessible and visceral, and succeeded where I think others have failed quite frequently. So yeah, there was a sense of it being an epic play and a family and political drama as well. Yeah, I count myself very fortunate to have been part of that production. There was some incredible performances. I mean, Tom was incredible as Caius Marcius. You know, there was a sort of level of commitment there, and a finesse to the work that he did that was quite something. You know, when you've got sort of Mark Gatiss and Deborah Findlay and Peter de Jersey and Birgitta Hart Sorensen and Elliot Levy and Helen Schlesinger and Mark Stanley and Dwayne Walcott and Rashenda Shandal, you know, these are just
like household names, all of you.
Wow.
Yeah, it was well, you know, as we'd say in sport, as you'd say in sport, the depth of the bench was pretty deep. So
Not heard that before.
yeah, it was something else, I think. I mean, it's not the brightest or the lightest of watches.
It's quite heavy, isn't it? Yeah, it's not going to make you feel great afterwards.
Not particularly, but
sometimes that's nice, though, isn't it?
yeah, you know, you don't have to dig deep, don't you?
Yeah, 100%. Hopefully that covers, I know there's been so many questions, so hopefully that covers lots of different topics and shows. I'm so sorry if I haven't managed to ask any of the questions that you guys have been sending in, but both Hadley and Rosalie have very long CVs, so there's lots of things that we could discuss.
That's very nice.
Thank you so much for talking about those. I'm going to do a very quick fire round with you before I ask you one final question. So super fun, just tell me the first thing that comes into your head, no pressure. So favourite musical ever?
Company?
Jesus Christ Superstar.
What's one role that you haven't played that you would still love to play?
Sally Bowles.
Sweeney Todd.
Who is your biggest singing idol?
Hadley Fraser. Okay, Joni Mitchell.
Kurt Elling.
Mary Poppins or Nanny McPhee?
Nanny McPhee.
Mary Poppins.
Whoa.
Did you know there's going to be a Nanny McPhee musical? I'm telling everybody about this because I'm so excited.
Is there?
Yeah, and apparently Emma Thompson's working on it.
Oh, I love her.
Yeah, me too.
Pick up the phone, Rosalie.
Hi, Emma.
Bye. Belting or soprano? Probably go to you, Rosalie, for that one.
I think I might say belting. That's probably changed over the years.
I think I'd say soprano.
I don't know, because soprano sometimes it's hard.
I'm listening to opera at the moment.
Yeah, you are, aren't you?
Yeah.
Who is your favourite on-screen director?
On-screen director. To have worked with, or
perhaps one that you admire, maybe someone that you watch with films.
Oh, wowzers.
David Fincher, probably.
Yeah.
Oh my God, I can't single one out. Who directed Lunchbox?
Pass. Done films. Let's just say
That's
yeah.
terrible that I don't know.
Let's just say rest in peace to Irfan Khan for the Lunchbox. Yeah.
Tell me about your craziest stage door interaction.
I remember one of yours.
What was that?
I I remember it was to do with Coriolanus. Actually, I think it was to do with a lady jumping into Tom Hiddleston's car as it was moving off.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
Unbelievable. I thought she was going to die.
Yeah, it was like a stunt move, wasn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Crazy stage door. Oh.
Could be to do with my mum.
Okay.
Just in really, just how excited she gets.
Oh, yeah, she does get really excited, doesn't she?
What's your funniest on-stage mishap ever?
There's so many. Oh my God, there's so many. How could you pick out one? Okay, here's a piece of knowledge that I should never ever have said. Never really. Should I?
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay, so when I was quite young, because obviously I'm really young now,
Yes.
I was at the Royal Shakespeare Company. We were doing a production with Hecuba with Vanessa Redgrave.
Ha! I know this story.
And interesting enough, we were quite a naughty bunch, and we were in Washington, and somebody dared me to put a fart machine in Vanessa Redgrave's big billowing gown, and I did it, and I pressed go, so she loved it.
Oh, okay, she loved it. You weren't in the bad books the rest of the day.
No, she was quite game. We were all right. We were all right. I wouldn't have done it had she not, but it was. I mean, I don't know how we got through that.
Okay, big final question, and just thank you so much once again to everybody that's been very kind in donating so far. All of them come straight through to our Just Giving page, and it's appreciated a huge amount, so just thank you so much. If you are watching this back later on and you do want to continue to donate, club11.london/donate is the best place for that. To you both then, my final question: what's been so great about doing these live conversations with some amazing people is this whole discussion around when the art perhaps slightly unsure, but it is going to happen. So when that does happen, what's the one thing that you're most looking forward to doing? I think, can you hear me? I think I can hear you. Yeah. Here, I think you're back. Can you see me? I'll see you soon. I think we might have lost you, so I'll see you soon. Let's see how we get on. I think it might have cut out, so I'll see you soon. Thank you guys so